My son, the mathematician, has several of Ohanian's books. It's all coincidental, right? Anyway, my comment about Ohanian's book was that Einstein made a lot of mistakes, went back and corrected them, but this was the creative process. This is what you go through. Einstein was not a good student. He was bored with the classes. He was a voracious reader in physics in areas he was interested in, which weren't always the areas that the professors were interested in. You see the pattern. Isaac Newton, also covered in Hans Ohanian's book, exactly the same way. A lazy student, so it seemed, when you look hard, a very good student at what he thought was interesting. Well, we do have people who seem to break the mold, who are very good students, and were also highly successful and very impressive. So being good at school is not forbidden. Okay, this is not an excuse for you not to go to class and don't do anything. Robert Oppenheimer, one of the great physicists of all time, was one of the best students ever to go to MIT. Madame Curie, double Nobel Prize winner. Can you imagine? One of the great breakthrough scientists ever in physics. Probably the best student who ever went to the university in Paris, okay, to the Sorbonne. Larry Hyman's a friend of mine. I like using him as a case. We were in grad school together, and he was always much smarter than anybody else, including me. He was one of the best students of all time. And today, he's one of the top phonologists in the world in terms of phonological theory. What happened in all three of these cases, and I know this for sure with Larry, the curriculum coincided with what their interests were. And the faculty, in Larry's case, were his collaborators. They were all on the same intellectual team working together. So school can work when you get common interest to people who will help you. Well, this allows me now to present two major hypotheses. The first is how we become very, very literate, and we're looking now to the highest levels of literacy and how we get very, very smart, and the highest levels of cognitive development. How do we do this in literacy? Well, the last 20 years I've been obsessed with one hypothesis, and there's only one way to become highly literate, and it's through reading. It's through reading what you want to read that you select yourself, what we call free voluntary reading. Free voluntary reading, the kind of reading you did last night before you went to sleep. How many of you read last night before you went to sleep? How many of you, like me usually, how many of you kept reading even though it was too late and you should have gone to sleep? This is positive addiction, right? This kind of reading, the reading that is disdained and disrespected by teachers, parents, etc., in too many cases, is what made the difference for you and for me. It's the source of our ability to read well. It's the source of our ability to write with a competent writing style. It's the source of our ability to handle complex grammatical constructions. It's responsible for most of our spelling ability, all of our educated vocabulary nearly. And I am predicting, I'm hypothesizing. This is a real hypothesis. If you have a hypothesis that you're not really sure of, you call it a conjecture. I learned that from my son, the mathematician. He says, oh, it's only conjecture, don't worry about it. But this, I think, is a pretty good hypothesis. And I'm going to give you a case history and some research behind it. All of us in this room, everyone in this room, has developed high levels of literacy in one, probably two languages. We've all gone through the same path, and I went through it too. 3 stages, and I'm going to claim they're universal. Stage number 1, stories. Hearing stories from your teacher at school, hearing stories from mommy and daddy, from your siblings, from the lady at the library. This is a universal. The studies on story listening, hearing stories read aloud or stories made up, is stunning, absolutely stunning. Kids who are read to regularly do better in nearly everything they're tested on. Do better in school, they have better vocabularies, they're more interested in reading, etc. Overwhelming research on this. A little of the gossip here. In